Kevin. Okay, so welcome to Merriwether's World, episode 54. Can you believe it? 54 hours of babble and nonsense. I am your host, Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, author of Idiot's Guide Foraging, creator or co-creator of the amazing Wazoo foraging bandana, and lots of other stuff. As usual, I want to do a quick shout out. Hey, Amy Buckman is here. Amy was another
hey, Amy,
neighbor of ours. Okay, so like I said, this is episode 54, talking about kids' brains. And as usual, please stop text or sending me PMs during the show. Okay, as usual, I want to start out with a quick shout out to our sponsors, such as Uncommon Bees. Remember, if you access them right now and use the Forking Weeds discount code, you get a discount. And also Herbs, if you are looking for hard to find herbal remedies right now. And what's great about them, if you contact him, he'll set up a Zoom meeting to discuss things with you to get a better idea of what you may need. Of course, my cool new sponsor, the Outdoor Gear Craft. I'm sorry. Gotta look here. Campcraft Outdoors, maker of really awesome heavy-duty, post-apocalyptic-y type good backpacks. And then, of course, the Fear and Dread shop, where you can get all sorts of things like vacuum pack trauma gear. So give those people a shout. They have coupon codes that will help you save money in this time when saving money is good. So did this go up? Without further ado, like I said, tonight is a very special night because we're trying our first two-party interview thing without us not sitting here drinking beer next to each other. So our special guest tonight is the super child therapist Josh Brown, and I'm just hoping that he can do a brief introduction here. And
I would be happy to do it. I would be happy to do a brief introduction. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Hopefully others can too.
Okay, cool.
Let's start. If they can't hear us, they'll be very vocal about it.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Joshua Brown, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm in private practice with a group called Woodlands Family Institute. I've been there for about 7 years or so. I've been a licensed counselor for almost 20. I've been in human services for about 25 years. So spent a lot of time with a lot of folks. The majority of my career has been primarily with families with young children. And that's kind of where I am today, still just trying to be of service to people seeking it.
If I can add, when we first got Merriwether and Merriwether, Josh was instrumental in keeping us from being total screw-ups as far as parents would go. So,
ooh, okay.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Well, I'm glad.
All right. So at this point, again, I will just say, what are you going to tell us about? And then start telling us about it.
Well, you had mentioned that we were going to talk about kids' brains, and it's really more just my take, I would say, on the human brain. And this topic really became important to me, I would say, probably about 5 years ago. And when I got into private practice, I really felt like I needed to kind of hone in what I was really trying to do. Getting into private practice, you get with a little different type of clientele. They want a little bit more of I guess the science. And me, I'll tell you one of the lasting impressions of a conversation I had with you probably after we were like 2 years in. You had mentioned the concept of soft science, and I've never forgotten that. And it was great that you brought up soft science. But one of the cool things about technology is there's a lot pretty much thickening up the science of mental health. We're able to just really take into account what's actually happening in the brain when you just look me in the eyes and say hello. And it's definitely becoming a harder science now. And I'm not a smart dude like Mr. Vorderbruggen here, but what I've tried to do is take kind of what I've learned about the brain and just really simplify it into like brain for idiots, I guess, brain for dummies, I guess. And if you've heard of anybody that writes that type of thing, where I found this really helpful is in about fourth or fifth session with families, with kids, and talking with their parents. They usually come to me about the fourth or fifth session and go, okay, what is it we're actually doing here? And I go, glad you asked, because I'd like to dive into a little bit more of how my brain is working as I'm like taking into account me experiencing you guys as a family, me experiencing your child, me experiencing you as a couple, and let me talk to you about how my brain's firing. So kind of what I do with clients, I'm a very visual person, although what I create is invisible visuals, right? I'm always doing this, I'm drawing. What I'm really trying to do is link clients to something that's tangible. I've felt like that's a big thing that's missing in my field is something somewhat hard to hold on to when we're thinking about like what's happening in an interaction, what's happening when my kid's like losing his mind, what's happening when I'm losing my mind. So I'm a real like metaphor analogy type of guy. And ultimately what popped into my head was the emotional digestive system. And I started just thinking like we're consuming the world around us, just like you would consume something, you would put something in your body, food for fuel. Can you hear me okay?
Through the eyes,
Okay.
we're taking information in.
And we're taking it like in like epic amounts. We're not just taking one bite at a time, chewing it, and maybe a plate of food at a time, chewing it up, digesting it. Okay. And we're taking in sounds, we're taking in the air in the room, we're taking in the light, we're taking in words, we're taking in eye contact. Walk into HEB, Walmart, Sam's, whatever, you're just inundated with information that's landing on your brain. And unlike what I've kind of come to realize is that unlike I'll say our nutritional digestive system, like which even though it's kind of crude in the output, has a little bit more of a it's a little bit more of a sophisticated way of processing the food, turning it into fuel, getting rid of the bad stuff, hopefully, right? What I realized is like our emotional digestive systems really suck. And so I just wanted to impress that upon parents, upon clients, first and foremost, is you're taking in a lot. Now, with that, what is the brain's number one responsibility? Really, survival, right? Keeping the person alive. So if I think there's a number one role of the brain, it's constant surveil of threat. It's surveying threat all around. What I like to impress upon, especially parents, when they're thinking about their child's behavior is everything is a threat. Then our brain processes it to go, okay, that, go ahead. You had a thought.
So the default setting is it's a threat, and then it actually has to analyze it and convince itself it's not a threat?
Well, everything is a threat. It never changes. In my concept, in my brain, is it never changes whether or not it's a threat. You just start to process, is this safe or unsafe? Okay. So the overarching theme of, so if I'm going to kind of visually create, I'm going to create a visual for you how I see the digestive system is kind of taking it like a funnel, right? Mm-hmm. And overarching the funnel is just threats all around, right? And the theme of it is, and I'll kind of segue just a little bit. I had a client one time, she said, why do I keep doing the same stuff over and over, even though I know better? And I said, how do you feel? So we don't do better when we know better, because I do a lot of stuff I know better than to do, right? But it's the other stuff that makes me feel better. The stuff I shouldn't do, that makes me feel better, because we want to feel better, right? And you can even think about what you're doing in the direction that you're going in some of your, professional endeavors. We're looking to help people feel better. We're looking to find ways to feel better, and because we do better when we feel better. In the mental, go ahead. It seems like you have another thought.
Oh no, I'm just intrigued. I'm following.
Okay, so what? So I struggled with that word "feel," and one of the things I've done in my practice is really try to be very specific with terminology, even the simple words like feel and emotions, because I think they get misused a lot. They get used against us a lot. And they become these cliches, like, how does that make you feel? And we get laughed at. So I really wanted to, not only through the idea of this emotional digestive system, was really like lock in on terminology, and let's use words specifically with a certain intent. And so anyway, when I thought we do better when we feel better, I struggled, like, what does that mean? What do I need to feel? And so thought, and a lot of my ideas come from like picking from different resources throughout my career, right? And there's, like you've probably done in your life, you've just learned from thousands of people, right? You can't name them all. Yeah. And for anybody who I'm picking up on your idea, talk to me, and I'll just give you lots of love, because I'm just trying to do my best with my work, right? But anyway, I really struggled with that word "feel." And basically, again, I want to oversimplify everything and start from there. We're very complex, but I want to make it simple first, because if we can't do the simple work first, it's hard to really do the complex work. So what I really wanted to do is find, what is it I'm feeling? And I kind of narrowed it down to two things. We're either safe or unsafe, and that's what your brain is trying to determine. So there's a threat. The threat can be, it can be you smiling at me. That's still a threat, and from you it would be a real threat. But it's still a threat. My brain has to consume it, process it, digest it. Then it becomes fuel for me. It elicits an emotion, right? It becomes an experience that elicits an emotion, and then that becomes, in my mind, sort of fuel. So experiences fuel emotion. So that's kind of that's kind of how I'm gonna like taper down this funnel, and kind of show you how I visualize the processing, how we're digesting a moment.
Okay.
So I'm actually looking at my computer, so I'm gonna because I'm trying to help stay on track a little bit too. Yeah. So I really wanted to, within that funnel, at the top of the funnel, so here's my funnel, at the top, in my brain, I see a filter, okay? So anything that we're consuming and we're sucking in at high speed, I mean, a lot of times we talk about like children being sponges. I've kind of debunked that, like they're not sponges. So here's my idea of a sponge is, if I put it on the floor and there's no moisture around, the sponge has nothing to do. So a vacuum, if it's on, it's going to suck everything in the room, even the fine particles, right? So a sponge just lays there and does nothing unless there's water. And then once it gets filled up, it can't take on any more liquid, right? So a sponge is just, it doesn't really accurately describe what we do. And this isn't just kids, this is you, and I know you because I know how you consume the world around you. I lived next to you for 10 years and it was a beautiful thing, my man. But anyway, I really wanted to impress upon that upon parents especially, because kids are consuming probably more than they can really digest at a time. Actually, grown-ups are too. But at the top of that funnel, in my visual and my vision is a filter. And in that filter, it's probably where like our past experiences are housed, my religious affiliations, my gender, my traumas, ethnicity, temperament, developmental levels, education,
So
all
anything
that.
that may affect or change the input some.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. So, and in this filter, so something may come in through the filter for me and it'll just pass right through. Whereas for you, Mark, maybe that has something, there's something that triggered, we use that's a big word. There's something that triggers what passes through to actually grow. It gets bigger. Some things just go through unaffected. Some things maybe even bounce off. And I would say a lot of what I do therapeutically, especially with adults, not especially with adults and kids, because I do work with kids and adults and couples.
The whole family unit or everything.
Is we're really trying to somehow manipulate the filter a little bit. We're not going to really change things, but maybe manipulate how the filter right off the bat receives what comes through it. So now imagine something coming through the filter. It's manipulated in some way. Maybe it gets bigger. Then that creates what we feel. Okay. Or just the present experience. I'm kind of even moving away a little bit from the word feel. So a lot of times people will say, like, I feel like you don't like me. And so I'll go, okay, then what emotion does that give you? So I'm trying to separate the two. Some people will say, I feel mad. And then that became confusing to me. And I think it becomes confusing to kids too, because we use that so much in so many different ways. So when I hit my arm, that created a feeling that then elicits an emotional response. In this case, it just, I'll say it makes me laugh because I'm feeling kind of funny right now. I just do that, and it's a silly. So it elicits an emotion. So I really wanted to separate those two. So when I'm talking to a client, and they'll say something like, I'm really feeling mad. I'll go, okay, tell me what's making you feel that way. So your emotion is anger. There's something fueling that anger. What are you experiencing? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, okay, you said you're mad. Tell me about what's making you mad. And I want to distinguish those two so they can speak more clearly to me. They can understand themselves better. As parents, you can help your kids learn to articulate their emotions better, which is where a lot of the gap in parenting comes from. The communication issue. Go ahead.
Josh Bronson says hi.
Hello.
Brian Tesh something says that. I don't know who Bronson is, but okay.
Well, hello. I think I know a few Bronsons.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway, continue.
I appreciate it.
So I hope I didn't throw you off track there, but
no, man.
okay.
I'm used to being off track.
Sorry, you were my neighbor.
Yeah, you know that. So I'm just going to scroll down here to kind of get myself back a little bit on track.
So separating feelings from input.
Yeah, just really distinguishing distinguishing the terminology a little bit. So again, I'm gonna kind of redraw it out. So we have a funnel. We're just sucking in the world around us. It's coming through a filter. All this stuff that threatens us. Our brain is trying to decide, is it safe or unsafe? And it does that through processing the experience, turning it into emotion, and then that's where a lot gets fueled. Okay, so here's where I see becomes a problem in an emotion is we're not consuming one thing at a time. Okay, so I can experience something that makes me mad and deal with that in maybe a vacuum much easier than the fact that now I'm dealing with, and think of what we're going through right now. And I've just really been thinking about how everyone is under a threat And what are most people feeling? So we do better when we feel better. So if we're saying it's safe or unsafe, what are most people actually feeling then from that safe, unsafe? Most people are unsafe.
Yeah.
So I can't even go up to somebody without, like, I did it with you when at the DMV. Like, I'm like, hey man, and we're like, we look at each other and we're like,
Elbow.
right? We do that elbow. And it's like, we're so hyper sensitive to what could hurt us right now. So we're under stress. So now think about, I don't know if you've caught yourself, but I catch myself looking at everything I'm touching and going, oh my gosh, how many people just touched that? I played a game of Uno with a kid in session the other day, and I was like, I guess we're touching these cards after each other. Man, are we not allowed to even touch cards now? I disinfected me too. We can't do anything now without having to take pause and go, am I about to get a disease that could kill me?
Or give it to someone if you're.
Or give it to someone that could kill them. It's so subtle, but we're all living kind of under threat. So, and we're unsafe. And so we're having to stay what ultimately I'm going to lead to with the emotion. So we're scared. We're scared. We're unsafe scared. You can be safe scared, but we're unsafe scared because of the experience that we're going through. Maybe some people, their fear and their lack of safety is more exacerbated because of the filter that they have. Maybe somebody has really been sick in their past, a near-death experience with a virus or something. So they're going to be different than me. I've never had a major illness, so I'm kind of like, I'm probably going to be cool. Like, I'll just kind of be cautious, but I'm young ish. I feel young.
Younger than me.
I believe I'm young. I try to take care of myself. So it just, the information that comes through my filter is going to be a little bit different. So I'm processing it differently. And so I may still have a sense of fear. There is a real unsafe aspect to that fear, but my level of regulation of that emotion is like a 1. Maybe I have a 1 level scared, right? But the problem is, it's not just that singular event. It's then I come home to my wife, or then I have to deal with, we're thinking about our daughter's schooling now because she's homeschooling, which is a whole new world, by the way. And I have had more people be frustrated about, like, I'm not a teacher, I don't do this. I don't know if you guys, but so
we're just no, we're not laughing at them. We understand the pressures in a way. Emergency really... homeschooling is way different than making the conscious decision to do it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting phenomenon that's going on. Really interesting conversations I'm having with a lot of people who are really frustrated, and so they're angry.
Yeah. Hopefully you will be able to give some advice to those people before we end the show. So,
people might not like I'll see what happens, right? I'll see what happens with my advice. So let me go back to the funnel then. Mm-hmm. So we have a filter, we have the experience, and then we have the emotions. Now in my practice, I keep emotions very basic. It's happy, mad, sad, scared. People come in and say, like, I'm really anxious, and I'm going to go, tell me what you're scared. What's scaring you? I'm not really scared. I'm like, hold up, it's okay. Your body, and you have anxiety in your body, that is fear-based. Let's just talk about being scared. I've found that when people use the actual word to the emotion, it seems like they have a better narrative for it. Once they just like own it, like, okay, yeah, I'm scared. I'm frustrated. Tell me about what's making you mad. No, I'm not really mad. I'm like, it's okay. Like, tell me what you've just gone through. Oh, well, my husband did X, Y, and Z. I said, the right emotion that goes with that 100% of the time for you is going to be anger. So let's talk about your anger. That's another reason why I separate emotion from feeling, because I could say, Mark, I feel like you don't like me. And you could say, Josh, what is the emotion that comes with that? And I would say sadness. But the sadness is rational. That's happy, mad, sad, scared is just what I've been blessed with to be able to monitor these threats around me. But me believing or thinking or feeling that you don't like me, that could very well be irrational. So we might go back and reshape that. You wouldn't say, well, Josh, you shouldn't be sad. Stop being sad. You would say, tell me about what's going on that's making you believe I don't like you.
Gotcha.
See, so I want to like really distinguish what we're talking about. And when parents are talking about their kids, I really want to distinguish. I want to make these real clear separations between their emotions, what their kid's experiencing, what they're experiencing with their kid. So we can just clarify things a little bit more. So what happens is happy, mad, sad, and scared gets fueled. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think in my visual, that's where the breakdown can really become, because if you get too mad, if you can't keep that anger regulated, it's going to move into dysregulation. And it can do that faster for you than it could for me, maybe. Maybe if you have, a short fuse.
Lately,
Possibly, right?
Yeah, I've been a little snappy with the family.
And so a lot of where we see kids' behavior manifest in my observation is in like heightened, dysregulated emotionality. So a kid gets anxious, we'll call it scared, right? And then maybe all of a sudden you see him start to be hyperactive. Okay. So then the parent will say, sit down, stop, what are you doing? But what the kid can't do a lot of times is say, go ahead, and say, Dad, I'm scared.
Things are coming together. So
okay.
You are, if the kid says, or the parent says, hey, stop, sit down, they're not doing anything about the anxious part. They're not helping.
Because they're not recognizing it.
Right.
We've just really conditioned ourselves to be managers of behavior without really knowing a story. And even adults who are in crisis can't tell you the story. All they're doing is manifesting maybe their fear, their sadness, especially fear, sadness, and anger. But believe me, I've met you, Mark. You can have very dysregulated joy too. I've seen that, right?
I'm a default setting is probably happier than I probably should be, except when I'm really angry.
But what's the story behind that? If you were just so excited and you were talking so fast, and I'm like, Mark, slow down, stop, and then I was shaking you, and then that turned into some extra threat, right? Because now you're so threatened that you're dysregulated, even though it's a good threat, it's a safe threat that's eliciting joy. Now I'm like going, settle down. And now that threat, you're already dysregulated. So now that threat becomes it moves over into a different, but you already have so much fuel. You'll be like, what's wrong with you? Why can't, now we're fighting, right?
I know what I'm doing up here on the roof.
Okay. Yes. That is the Mark I
right,
remember.
We'll forget that story ever happened.
Right. So it then becomes the struggle of regulating our emotions, and because when they get too dysregulated, then we're going to move into kind of the next part of the funnel, which would be like our fight, flight. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So just a really good question came up here. In your experience, Josh, is a lack of drive or motivation associated with a particular emotion?
I would say that can be. I would put that to sadness. That's a good question, because that could sound like a depressive state or a major depression. And I'm not a big diagnostician. I try to stay away, just because I'm not good at it, especially. I try to stay away from a lot of the diagnostic terms, like saying depression or major anxiety or borderline bipolar, all those things, right? But really think about, okay, something's threatened to this person so much that now they're just shut down. So at that level of dysregulation, when we cross over kind of this threshold from just being highly dysregulated to now moving into more of our crisis, our very primitive reptilian brain. We're in that fight, flight response. And it's actually fight, flight, freeze, fall asleep. And a lot of people don't really know about the freeze and fall asleep. And I'm not good at really telling you which part of the brain is doing what, and which one is the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and all this stuff. But the best way I can just kind of simply explain it is when we've had too much, when we're so dysregulated, we're going to move from our thinking part of our brain down to our just very instinctive part of our brain, and it's not thinking. And so we may just fight, we may lash out, we may run, we may freeze. Husbands have classically learned how to be great freezers, and because we can't like hit you, we can't run away from you. And I've realized I can never run away from my wife because she still follows me. So I just sit there, and somehow I've just naturally learned to act like I'm listening when I'm just shutting down. And then she says, "So what did I just say?" And I'm like, the last word. I might remember the last word, right? So that's kind of one side of the fight, flight, freeze paradigm for me. The other is the fall asleep paradigm. And so in nature, kind of simply, and you would know this better than me, Mark, nature, the reason why an animal may fall asleep is what? Under threat. Under threat, why would an animal fall asleep?
Oh, it's either playing dead or remaining motionless, so the predator doesn't see it.
So that's going to be the freeze response of an animal. Then when it moves into fall asleep, it's I am going to die, and the brain just it's like starts shutting everything down. That's the way I understand it, and I had never heard of like that fall asleep. And so it made me start thinking about, okay, there are a lot of humans who have fallen asleep. Their processes are just shut down. They have no motivation. The threats are so big, they're so behind maybe the 8 ball that it's just this like chronic. So they're just, people are just so dysregulated, and they're in a constant state of crisis. They're in a constant state of dysregulation. So now, why is this important?
And refuses any, not input, because you can't stop the input, I'm assuming, but it's just trying not to deal with it. It's going, I can't, I'm done.
So what I think is that instead of being able to process it in our executive functioning part of our brain, everything's just going straight to primitive. So it's just everything's reaction. I mean, maybe you've been around those people who just are instant fight people. They just, everything is, maybe you're one of those.
No.
So the reason why I think this is really important, and one of the things that you were talking to me about on the phone the other day when we were visiting the idea of doing this, was maybe to talk to people, that are having to homeschool now and some of that stress levels going up. I think where this stands out to me, and especially working in early childhood a lot, I've realized that as educators and as parents, we are often trying to teach dysregulated kids. And they're not only just dysregulated, they may be even in a crisis brain, right? So they may actually be in their fight, flight, freeze aspect of their brain. And the problem with that is if I'm here and I'm not here, then I can't learn. So we do better when we feel better. What do we need to feel? We need to feel safe. When we feel safe and that emotion is regulated, then we are more ready to learn. So we talk a lot about teachable moments. And I've realized just through lots of observation, mistakes on my own, especially as a husband, I've been trying to communicate with somebody that was dysregulated. Parents or spouses are trying to communicate with somebody who's actually not in a receptive brain, not in a safe brain, not in a regulated brain. And so I've really tried to kind of impress that upon people to what are we working with right now? What's the process here? And then I'm often asked, okay, can you give me some coping skills? Can you give me some strategies? And I'm just terrible at giving coping skills, and I'm terrible at giving strategies. But what I've realized is in that, where in the funnel, where in the process part do coping skills and strategies take place? And I really see that they take place when the emotions start to get fueled. Okay, so coming down the funnel, down sort of the bottom of the funnel is happy, mad, sad, scared. Always going to keep it basic. And then everything that we're digesting on the way down is pouring fuel to that. Okay, and we don't often recognize that we need to cope when we're starting to get fueled. We don't know that we need to take some deep breaths and go, oh man, my body's starting to feel that. Oh, I'm starting to get a little bit, a little bit nervous here would be the word. Nobody'd say I'm starting to get scared. Like I'm getting a little, we're not recognizing that.
Until it's too late.
Until it's too late. We're consuming more. We're not really, level 10 mad or whatever whatever the bad DEFCON is, right? We're not that. I can't remember. I always get it backwards, right? Yeah. And most parents have asked me, what do I do when my kid is going bat bleep crazy, right? And I'm like, run. Well, I try to do this and I try to do that. I'm like, you are trying to teach somebody who is unteachable at the moment. They are in crisis. I've asked first responders. Every first responder I ask says the same thing when I say, when you come up onto a scene and you have somebody who's injured and you can't get near them, what do? They'll go, we got medicine for that. Boom. Like, okay, parents can't do that to their kids, but what are they trying to do? They're trying to regulate that nervous system as quickly as possible. So ultimately, all this is coming down to our nervous system, how it's being affected by the threats around us, how we're not really knowing what is actually happening to us. And then we just become these real impulsive, reactive creatures. And we're often impulsive, reactive in very dysregulated, if not in crisis states. And that's where we're trying to learn. That's where we're trying to that's where parents are trying to teach. That's where teachers are trying to teach. Now, we don't really get that for mental health. But if I said, okay, go to work today and don't eat. You're like, no, I need to eat. Go to work today and be freezing cold, or go to work today and you can't work when you don't feel better. And it's ultimately like when we eat, now we're safe, right? So I try to just make real definitive clarification of that. Now, in the coping skill, did you have a thought?
Well, yeah, so it occurred to me, so once the child is going deregulated, it'll often trigger a deregulation in the parent too, because they're trying
Absolutely.
these, it's like the old thing where you got a line of matches and each one is igniting. You have to be the match that steps away.
Absolutely. That's a great observation. No, it's and I see it all the time because a kid is, we'll say, dysregulated. They're in crisis mode in some way, shape, or form, and they hit you. Okay. Now, we don't even know the story behind why the kid has just hit, but what is a kid almost 100% of the time told when they hit? Don't hit. But why does a kid hit?
Because they have no other coping mechanism at that point. They're trying to scare away the threat.
A kid could be hitting to get your attention. Will you play with me? Sometimes a kid hits is a way of communicating, hey, dad, come play with me, right? You're not paying attention to me. I'm threatened because I want to play and I want your attention. And so I hit you, and then you turn and go, stop hitting. And so now I'm threatened and you've just hit me. So now I'm doubly threatened, right? So I hit you back because I threatened you. And now we just spiral. We just spiral, right? And it's hard to stay regulated ourselves because that was an impulsive, like, it caught me off guard. I didn't know something was about to come and slam me upside the head, literally. And then my first response is to like do that back. And now it's very possible that we have these like chronic scenarios of just fight.
Feedback
right?
loops.
Feedback loop. That's a great way of putting it. So what are the coping skills to that? And you kind of hit like right on the head. Is my number one coping skill for helping my daughter cope is to learn how to regulate my own emotions, learn how to communicate and regulate myself.
Right.
Because if she's in crisis and I get pulled into that crisis, we're just two people in crisis. So now we're very individualistic thinkers. We're both trying to survive on our own, and I'm bigger and stronger than her, and I'm going to win. But she has really powerful tears, so they do knock me down pretty good. But you see where I'm going in that. And coping skills are really difficult. Coping strategies are really difficult, but I see it really in 3 phases. So in my digestive system, coping skills are kind of a 3-phase mechanism. There's psychological coping skills. So we would kind of classically think of that as like, using positive thoughts and, recognizing that you're in crisis and go, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But the body doesn't really respond to that. So if I'm starting to get dysregulated, my heart rate's going up, my respiration's going up, because now I'm starting to recruit energy to battle threat. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And I go, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Most of the time, your body doesn't regulate. Okay.
Yeah.
Another possible component to the coping phases. So there's psychological, would be relational interactional. So if I'm scared, right, and now my body's recruiting energy and my heart rate's going up, and now my digestive system is starting to, my nutritional digestive system is starting to get out of whack. Part of the instinct process, right, is to start, your brain starts to manipulate your heart, your respiration, and your digestion. Yep. If I say, Mom, Dad, I'm scared, and then you go, come here, that's essentially a coping. We're trying to regulate that nervous system. So a relational is, but there's not always people there, right? So somebody will go, what is it? Oh yeah, that is scary. It's going to be okay. That actually, I think, is more effective than doing it ourselves, until we can be more effective at saying it's okay, and letting our body start to trust that when I do say it's okay, it is okay. Okay. But really the way to regulate the body is to manipulate your own body. And that's why we classically go back to, what do I do when I'm getting anxious? You got to take deep breaths. You got to breathe. What do I do when I'm anxious? You got to soothe yourself. And so what do we do with young kids when they're self-soothers? We tell them, stop doing that. Like you'll have, like, especially kids who are maybe like on autism spectrum do this a lot. They start to have tics. And what they're really trying to do is regulate their nervous system because something's overwhelming them. But we say, keep your hands down, stop doing that. And then we get into that loop that you mentioned. I can't remember
feedback loop,
how you said it, but you said it really well a minute ago. But yeah, we start to loop, and we're not recognizing that naturally a person is trying to soothe themselves. We may see people that start like, popping their fingernails or like maybe like massage their neck a little bit or whatever. And now they're in class and they're hyperactive. They're being disruptive. They're moving too much. And we say, stop doing that. But it's a kid who can't say, because they're not aware, they're not self-aware enough to know that their body's dysregulated. They're feeling something weird in their heart, their stomach, and their breathing because something in the environment is threatening them. And it may just be that I've sat in this desk for too long. Like I'm only good for like 3 minutes and 47 seconds. And now we're at 3 minutes and 48. And oh my gosh, I've just lost my ability to be comfortable. And we have somebody going, be still, stop. We've gone too long with just some silence. We need some break. Hey, what are you doing over there? Stop talking. And what we're really trying to do is regulate, but now since we're threatened, somebody threatens us because I just threatened them, and we're in that loop, and we're fighting. Yeah. And now nobody's learning, nobody's ultimately teaching, and we're just working so hard on behavior. So trying to really strategize with parents on how to be good advocates for their kid by understanding their kid in a little bit of a different way, understanding that something is going on in that nervous system. Now, Some of it could be organic, some of it could be emotional. That's what I try to delineate a little bit through people coming to my practice. And if it's organic, maybe I might send them to a nutritionist. If it's organic, maybe I'll send them to an occupational therapist to see if there's just something like kind of genetic
some sort
or
of
whatever
chemical
different about their nervous system. Yeah. Could be chemically, yeah, whatever. But you'll hear this term a lot, and in my world, which is integrating. And the way I best understand that is sometimes, like just if we're thinking of our nervous system as a bunch of electrical wires, which it is, right? Yeah. Sometimes those wires aren't all connected. At different parts of, different areas of our body. And so that's going to change your hard drive. That's going to change your process. That's going to change the way the information comes in. And trauma itself is something that really kind of disconnects. In this case, it really disconnects brain hemispheres, right? So we want a lot of trauma work is to get those back integrated. So you're processing, your hard drive is processing all the information. But what happens is a lot of people just crash and it's hard to reboot. Trying to delineate for me, like if it's emotional thing, I want to really get into, some of the kind of rectifying for kids, especially if it's emotional, they've been emotionally compromised, help create safer emotional relationships, safer emotional understanding, help parents regulate, help their kids regulate, help kids have safe experiences with their family, and almost kind of rewrite the narrative that's possibly spinning out of control. And if we can do that as an early intervention form. Update the software, man. I like it. And it plays really good in our technological age. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. I love to do things like that to help, give something tangible to hang on to that parents or even individuals are trying to do. I use terms a lot like drowning. And Kavan may even remember this because that was one of the things that we talked about is like, you can't teach someone to swim when they're drowning. You have to save them. And we often try to teach when somebody's drowning, or we often yell at them for drowning. Why are you drowning right now? I was watching a video, a parent took a video of her kid the other day, trying to get him to do some math. Because now this parent is like, she's very dysregulated because she's struggling to teach her kid at home. And her kid already struggles at school. So if he struggles with trained teachers and you're not a trained teacher, he's going to struggle even more, I'd say. And now he's at home. It's his safe space. And now you're just turning my safe space into that place that I hate. Okay. Gotcha. So there's a point where the kid, he's going, now this is like an 8th grade kid. I just don't want to do. And she goes, what do I do? And I'm like, he is drowning. Literally, look at him. He can't even get oxygen into his body right now. If you really believed he was drowning, what would you do? She said, I'd just go hold him. I'm like, go do that. Start there. Because you've got to get him back to safety. You've got to help him get his breathing back in order because he can't learn in that brain. He can't learn in that brain at all.
The only just trying to get out of that brain does not work. Absolutely. Now, what would be bad? What's even worse is you can't teach someone to swim when they're drowning. You can't save someone from drowning when you're drowning. And then so mom swims out. Now she's drowning. Then dad swims out and he's drowning. Now you have a whole family that's drowned. Now think of families. Big dog. And think of families. The dogs eventually go, these people are crazy, right? But think about families that may drown on a daily basis, and it's not like an actual drowning. So I'm not trying to offend anybody who's ever actually drowned or has maybe like lost someone to a drowning. Just trying to make a real vivid kind of concept. Yeah. Some of us, we're dysregulated, but it's really not, it's not
like a big punch to the face. It's not a big event. It's just subtle day-to-day disconnections. It's subtle day-to-day arguments and spats and frustrations. But add that up over the course of like 10 years.
Anger, mad. Yeah.
Yeah, every day for 10 years. Would you rather be mad one day in 10 years? The maddest you've ever been, maybe like, shoot one person. No, that's a joke, Mark. Right?
I'll let you pick the person.
But I asked somebody one time, what do you think is more abusive? To be punched in the face as a kid one time, or for 18 years of your life told, not right now, not right now, not right now, every day, multiple times a day, Dad, come play, not right now. Dad, will you do this with me? Not right now. Mom, when it is, not right now. Which is more abusive? To get punched in the face a few times? Or, I don't want to do either, right?
Yeah.
And I'm way guilty.
Interesting analogy there.
But trust me, I do way more of the like, not right now, like I'm doing something. Can't you see I'm busy? And too much of that.
I'm having dad guilt so big right now.
Hey, I'm good at making everybody feel guilty, but I always say
sure you're not Catholic?
I am an equal opportunity offender. If you see me at HEB being that guy, go, hey Josh, like, come on. Because it is hard, even for the people. Maybe it isn't even in your profession. You're an expert at several things, and it's probably even hard for you. Those expertises are even hard for you. So This is the stuff I think about and talk about on a daily basis, multiple times. And when you get close to that fire, it is
the
still
lizard
hot for
takes
everybody.
over.
Yeah. So it's about like not letting that lizard come in, going Hulk mode, right? It's about staying out of Hulk mode ultimately. So,
but that's been such a savior for me. But anyway, yeah, okay, no Hulk. You can tell I've been working out.
Yeah, man. Speaking of working out, that's a great way to regulate. That's and that's a great way to like prep your body to be strong when you need to be strong. You're not going to learn to be strong when you need to lift something heavy. We need to build ourselves up to be strong. And when the heavy moments come, we're there. Parenting is kind of the same way.
So that leads to the thought that there are exercises to help with that. Because you probably knew that was coming. How do I do this? Screams the parent.
I think it's about, are you familiar with the love languages? The 5 love languages?
Yeah.
So I really ultimately
associated with tacos.
I really think that ultimately what I prescribe to just about everybody is quality time. So if it's pretty well established and the parent is safe with me in the conversation, and like, okay, you guys have an unsafe relationship right now. No, you don't hit them. You're not abusive, but there's such tension in the relationship that neither one of you trust each other. Now you're the parent, and I want to put a lot of onus on you as the parent to say, hey, I want to try to rescue this relationship that is drowning. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to get you to shore, and I'm going to spend quality time with you. It's really about that quality time, because we're all going to mess up as parents. We're all going to say things that are impulsive. I'm not trying to create perfect parents. I'm not a perfect parent. And probably my biggest problem is I keep trying to be one, and that's where I get most of my hangups, right? But making sure that you're buffering so much with quality time. And it's not like, it doesn't have to be quality time where you're going to the movies, you're spending a lot of money. It's going and sitting in the playroom or in the bedroom with your kid and just, hey, like, what are you working on? And if they're not talking, don't feel rejected and walk away. Just sit there and like be interested in what they're doing. Kids are very forgiving ultimately. What they want more than anything is your eyes. And it doesn't take a lot of time to really get them to go, he sees me, she sees me, she cares about me. They see I'm here. They understand. They're trying to understand. Okay, they're my ally again. I can trust them. but it's easy to get that to spin out of control where we're always the enemy. One of the things I do a lot with Kaylee, um, and we'll even say maybe she and Tiffany, my wife, for those of you who don't know me, maybe they're in a little tense mother-daughter moment, right? You know, I want to remind Kaylee a lot of times, in that moment, like, we're trying to help you here. We're trying to help you. We're trying to give you a good life. You can trust us. Like, we are trying to give you a good life. But Dad, you know, I wanted to do this, and I'm like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Okay, thanks for telling me that. Hey, we're trying to give you a good life. Sometimes we can't do it exactly the way you want, but it's trying to get her back to that safe place in her brain where she can receive me. So I would say some of the activities are really taking something like this emotional digestive system concept and learning that so you can apply it to the moment. And it doesn't have to be this. You don't even have to agree with exactly how I create the flow. It's my simple way of processing that helps remind me, oh, wait, she's threatened right now. She has her toy right now, or her game. That is the most important thing in her life. And it doesn't mean jack to me, but it's the most important thing in her life. And that is what she wants. And I want to help her transition from that, as opposed to just like, really? We were needing to go 5 minutes ago and you couldn't stop playing that. But, oh man, I just asked her to do what I wanted to do because I'm the one that sets the agenda in the house, even though I'm not even doing the most important thing in my life, but she's doing the most important thing in her life. Oh, baby, I know this is really important to you. So really understanding the process, I think there's some great books. There's one book that I'll even mention because I love this author, Dan Siegel. He's a neuropsychologist and like therapist. And one of the reasons why I like him so much is he blends the hard science with the soft science. Because one day I met you and you mentioned soft science. And he has a lot of good books. One in particular is called The Whole Brain Child. So if anybody's looking for resources like that, I can't even think of some of the other titles off the top of my head, but Brainstorm is one, the Power and Purpose of the Teenage Brain, which some of it's a little
speed order, that one.
Yeah, some of it's a little it's a little technical as well, but he mixes a lot of technical with a lot of just good anecdotal observation and good explanations. So so I'd say if there's an exercise that parents can do is get an understanding of how you think scenarios are playing out. Get an understanding of how the moments are happening. And
so more self-awareness of yourself and the child.
Yeah. So ultimately the goal of therapy is to help people be self-aware. So a kid's going to come in, and ultimately my focus is to help them be aware of themselves, right? But that's 1 hour of a week. So, and that's going to be very therapeutic with me. So if I can help parents help their kids be more self-aware. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So what was the author's name again?
Dan Siegel, Siegel. And I'm going to pull up on my computer.
Siegel, like the bird?
Siegel. Pretty sure that's it. Siegel. Let's see. So he has The Whole Brain Child, No Drama Guide to Discipline, which a lot of parents like that book, and I often recommend that book. And I don't read a lot of books, so I typically only recommend the books that I've read. And I like to read just a few things. I don't like to read 1,000 different resources.
Yeah, it starts getting.
Yeah.
Okay. We have it's technically 9 o'clock.
Yeah, man.
But if you could just do a quick recap, funnel, emotions, fuel, outcome for people who join late, and hopefully they'll go back to the beginning of this and watch it once we're done here.
So sure. The way I see the brain process is that we are funnels with high-powered suction vacuums, and we are sucking in the world around us. And the more information that flies out, we don't stop sucking it in. We just suck all that. And what exists all around us, everything around us is threat. And the purpose of our brain is to process whether that we're safe or unsafe, right? To process that threat. That goes through a filter, which is all of our past experiences, our economic level, our developmental level, spirituality, gender, culture. Then that moves through that filter. Some things bounce off, some things come through just as they started, and a lot of things for us get bigger because of what we've been through. And then that becomes our present experience, what I would call the feeling. Not a lot of people think of feelings as the emotions, but I separate the feeling and that is what we're feeling right now. That's
like
why
a
I
nerve
said
impulse, like you said earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be more like the impulse. There you go. And that nerve impulse then fuels the emotionality. So like I said earlier, I feel like you don't like me. Then that hits my emotion very simply: happy, mad, sad, scared. Always try to keep it there, especially because when we're trying to teach kids to be aware of their emotions, I want to use happy, mad, sad, scared. It's easier to learn. If they're confused with the words, then they can't ultimately articulate their emotions, right? So it's fueling emotions. Now we want that emotionality to stay regulated. Why? Because if we're scared, got you back?
Yep.
If we're scared, we want that emotion to stay regulated. Why? Because if we're scared, then we can process better. We can engage that threat better. So if it's a lion and I'm supposed to be scared, that's the right emotion to have every time. But that doesn't mean I necessarily have to run. That doesn't mean it means I just have to process and think, what can I do? Fighting a lion in that place is very different than fighting a lion in the dysregulated crisis state. Okay. And I try to make this fighter, like MMA fighters, they don't fight in a fight flight brain. They fight in a regulated, highly fueled emotional brain, but very regulated, because they have to process their opponent. They have to be paying attention to all the signs, signals, understanding their body. And so a lot of people go, oh, like, I'm a fight person. Like, you don't know. You don't know. If you're in fight or flight, you don't know what you will do, because that's instinctive. There is no thought to that. But anyway, so we want to keep all those emotions regulated through relationships, through leaning on the people around us to go, hey, I'm feeling kind of scared right now. To physically manipulate our body through physical regulation, deep breathing, self-soothing, going for walks, exercising. Daily habits of that help our body already be in place to regulate. And then the psychological stuff, being able to like fill our heads up with a little bit more, I guess, positive thought processes, being more grounded in the reality. Because if we get dysregulated, if too much of that energy builds up, some people get there faster than others, then we're moving more into that fight or flight brain. Right. So the regulated brain can think and process. The dysregulated brain struggles to think and process. The fight or flight brain is just in crisis mode. And I think a lot of us are interacting with people in fight flight when they're either right at the edge of dysregulation or in that process and cross that threshold already. So
cool. Wow. A lot of really good information. Like I said, there's a lot of people under a lot of stress right now.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I thought hopefully getting a little insight into how people process, and I mean just recognizing that when the child is freaking out, all you can do at that point is try and bring them back to a feeling of safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yelling, arguing, trying harder. It's like, when someone goes to a foreign language, someone doesn't understand, they speak louder and slower. No, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
One thing I've really been doing just in my life in general, and I recommend everybody to do, there's a lot of great like videos on YouTube of just different, very mindful breathing. I do a specific type of breath work that's real deep, very like trying to get a lot of oxygen in my body type of breathing. Some people want to do, go ahead, you were gonna.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think we can take a vote here. Should we have Josh come back sometime soon? But I think, yeah, I still want to get into all the discussion we had on the phone, how, especially with anxiety and developing a sense of self strength and confidence, and how that helps with the anxiety. So
Yeah, for sure.
definitely.
I'm really passionate about that as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so I think that would be an awesome topic for next time.
And it lays right into this topic too. So
so
it sets the groundwork.
Yeah. So at this point, hopefully, give a shout out if you want Josh to come back. I'm pretty sure I can get him here.
Yeah, man, anytime.
Yeah, cool. And now that we kind of got this Zoom thing worked out and we know what we're doing, we can do that. So yeah, awesome. Probably not next week, but hopefully soon. It looks like we're all going to be stuck indoors for what, till May 4th, basically.
Oh, that's the new word out there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, so next time when we have Josh, we will talk about ways to empower yourself to help dealing with anxiety. Does that sound like a good way of describing it?
Man, we can go that route.
All right, let's do that route. Okay, people, again, thank you very much. It's always great to have you spend an hour and 7 minutes with us on a Wednesday afternoon. So now go out and be at peace with your family and keep the thoughts here, not the lizard.
Stay safe. Stay safe, right?
All right. Love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, as always. And I have no idea how to cut this